We at Airways magazine have a truly fascinating job. Between us, we've travelled all over the world, from Canada to the United States to most of Europe, Turkey, Oman and even as far afield as Japan. But all of these have one distinct thing in common. They're all in the Northern Hemisphere. But today, that changes. Today, we go south. You meet me at 4 PM on the 28th of October 2024. I'm at London Gatwick Airport, here to be part of Norse Atlantic Airways' inaugural flight from London to Cape Town. Norse Atlantic Airways is a relatively new airline, only commencing operations in June of 2022. They operate to only 13 destinations with a fleet of 15 aircraft, spread over their bases worldwide in Oslo Gardermoen, London Gatwick, Paris Charles de Gaulle, New York JFK and Miami International. From these bases, they can operate as far west as Los Angeles, with the US being a major target market for them, or offer seasonal services as far east as Bangkok, and as of today, as far south as Cape Town. London Gatwick is home to the airline's UK subsidiary, Norse Atlantic UK. Of London's 6 airports, Gatwick is the second busiest, mainly used for access to London rather than transferring through it. It's found on the London to Brighton main line and is one of the city's most well-connected airports, with it being served every few minutes by trains from Southern Rail, the Gatwick Express, Thameslink and the Great Western Railway, in addition to coach connections from across the country. It's also in the London travel zone, meaning you can use an Oyster card or contactless bank card to pay, meaning you don't have to queue for a ticket when you're getting on the train. The train station connects to Gatwick's South Terminal, which is where Norse Atlantic calls home. Check-in can be found between zones D and E. Unlike many airlines, Norse Atlantic does not offer an online check-in option, meaning passengers have to queue up at the bag drop area even if they're flying hand luggage, as I was this evening. As a result, you can only check in at the airport, unlike other airlines that allow passengers to check in up to 24 hours prior to departure. Despite this though, check-in would move fairly quickly, and the excitement would build from here on in, with our first glimpse of Cape Town from the boards at the back of the check-in desks. After tagging my bags, I made it through security fairly quickly, even while considering my additional frisking in bag search by the security team. It happens every time I go through security, I must just have one of those faces really. Gatwick South is still a terminal that requires the removal of belts and watches and the emptying of pockets. Newer airport security systems do exist, but they don't seem to have reached Gatwick just yet. The main departures concourse at Gatwick South is very adequate, with over 50 shops and restaurants in the central area after duty free. Notably, there's an abundance of literature shops, which is perfect for a bit of light reading when you're going on your next trip. However, if all you have to do is wait, and you're travelling on your own, and you've checked in 4 hours prior to pushback, Gatwick South doesn't lend itself to just waiting around all too well. So I decided to go for a little explore and find my aircraft for this evening. It was a bit of a trek, but I eventually found it sitting cold and dark at gate 17. Our aircraft for tonight is Golf Charlie Kilo Oscar Foxtrot, a 6-year-old Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner named Redwood. The aircraft was originally delivered to Norwegian Air Shuttle under the same registration in February of 2018, where it wore the name of Jon Miro, a Spanish-Catalan artist. Norse Atlantic acquired 15 of Norwegian's Dreamliners after the fall of Norwegian's long-haul arm. Norse Atlantic were able to pick them up very easily with very favourable leasing agreements due to the travel downturn during COVID. Of the airline's 15 Boeing 787-9s, Norse Atlantic UK operates 5 examples. Soon enough though, passengers began arriving at the gate, and a small pre-flight ceremony was held, with words of goodwill from Gatwick Airport representatives, Norse Atlantic CEO Bjørn Tore Larsen, and the South African High Commissioner to the UK. Soon afterwards, passengers were offered a commemorative keyring and biscuits, and then it was time to board. Tonight's flight was full, which suggests that there has been a lot of pent-up demand on this route for some time now. Norse Atlantic Airways currently operates this route every Monday, Wednesday and Saturday from October until the end of April. However, it was highlighted that they expect high demand, and therefore frequency to grow in next year's winter season. This was to be a very special flight for me, as not only had I never been to Africa before, or been on an inaugural flight before, but I had also never flown on a Dreamliner before. Truly a flight of firsts on the Explorers airline. My seat this evening was 7J, a window seat on the right hand side, second row from the last of premium economy. Norse Atlantic 787s are kitted out with 338 seats over 2 classes. Found in the front cabin section is premium economy with 56 seats in a 232 configuration. Behind this is economy class with 282 seats in a 333 configuration. For a low-cost airline, Norse Atlantic did very well on the amenities list, with a blanket and a pillow at every seat. After takeoff, we were issued with a set of eye patches and ear defenders for those wishing to sleep on this flight. My seat offered me a view of this British Airways Boeing 777, which was interestingly enough operating the evening's other inaugural flight from Gatwick, with this one heading to Bangkok later that evening. Soon enough though, we were pushing back to start the 11.5 hour, 6,000 mile journey to the bottom of the African continent. Our flight, callsign Longship 795, was cleared for takeoff from Gatwick's runway 26 left into the rainy October night, bound for warmer climates. Global financial crises are a breeding ground for airline expansions, owing to the vacuum left by already existing airlines shrinking or failing, leaving gaps in the market. This makes grounded aircraft cheap to procure, so newcomers can flood the market. We saw this after 2008, with the rise of new airlines such as WOW Air, Norwegian Air Shuttle and Primera Air all trying to fill the gap that legacy airlines had left behind, with cheap travel and aggressive expansions before demand had fully recovered. This, combined with the razor-thin profit margins that come with running a low-cost airline, unfavourable market economics and a somewhat flawed business model, allowed them to be in way over their heads, and eventually they would fall like dominoes. Often it would be the end of the summer season that would cripple these airlines. However, COVID would prove near fatal to many more. And enter Norse Atlantic. Far fewer have been so bold post-COVID as there were post-2008 as to start an airline and take customers from legacy airlines. This left the field somewhat safer for newcomers who have learned a lesson from the last financial crisis. Instead of going for an immediate capacity grab, Norse Atlantic instead decided to fill certain markets that had lost capacity, but also grow far less aggressively. In addition, they chose to have a diverse portfolio, filled with seasonal routes, availabilities for charter, and smaller unique selling points. Norse Atlantic has tried to make their business model far more resilient than those that fell before them. The airline's CEO, Bjørn Tore Larsen, is indeed very proud of his airline, and rightly so. I had the opportunity to interview him while on board, and he seemed to be a truly passionate person, and one who thinks with his heart as well as his head. He had this to say.
Okay, so thank you, first off, thank you for having me on board. Now, first off, I'm going to ask, so why Cape Town of all places, please?
Oh, have you been to Cape Town before?
I have never been to Cape Town.
You'll know when you get there. It's such a beautiful city, and it has not only the city itself, which is beautiful, and which has a lot of historic places, but also in the neighborhood you have Stellenbosch, you have the winelands, you have safari areas in the neighborhood as well, just an hour or two away, so there's so many reasons to go to Cape Town. Now, why did we pick Cape Town for our flight? Actually, I flew there last year with one of our aircraft from Oslo. We're going to Antarctica, and we made a fuel stop and tech stop in Cape Town. And after Antarctica, I had to go to London for a business meeting, so I had to take another airline. And it was crazy prices. This was in November, and there was no really strong reason why it should be that expensive, but it was crazy, and I thought we have to disrupt a little bit here and help the market to get a little more sanity into the fares. And that's the main reason. We thought it was the need for our service.
Fantastic.
The aircraft seats are largely unchanged from its time at Norwegian, and are very spacious indeed. With a comfortable 19 inches of width, a full 49 inches of pitch, and enough legroom for even the tallest of passengers to be comfortable, it arguably would make little sense to redesign the cabin in the first place. The seat controls are found in the armrest, with one control on the seat back, and one for the leg rest. The leg rest also has a built-in footstool which folds out and is operated by hand. In the armrest there is also a tray table which folds out like this. It's not exactly enormous, certainly not large enough to eat and work on at the same time, however it's large enough to have a meal on with a little bit of wriggle room. Under the opposite armrest is the in-flight entertainment screen. It's spring-loaded and pops out of the armrest like this. The in-flight entertainment is one thing that has been updated since the plane's time with Norwegian. It's fairly simple and attempts to cater to most needs and wants with a range of films and TV series. It's far from the IFE systems of British Airways or Emirates, but it never claimed to compare to either of them in the first place. At the end of the day, it is a low-cost airline, however that considered, the IFE system is still fairly extensive and certainly enough to keep you entertained for a flight of this length. There are also 2 universal power outlets by your feet. Meal service was simple too, but did the job adequately enough. I opted for the chicken option on this flight tonight, with the other option being a rigatoni and mushroom dish. It wasn't gourmet, but it wasn't anything to complain about either. One thing I did like was the salt and pepper shakers that was shaped after a Norse longship, a very fine little detail that brings the airline's inspiration inside the cabin. But there was nothing to see outside, so I chose to get a little bit of shut-eye before the sun came up. All is quiet in the cabin right now. Down below it's about 8 AM and I think we're straddling the coast somewhere over Namibia. I appeared to be the first one in the cabin awake, and the windows would remain dimmed and locked for another half an hour or so. The breakfast service was served about 90 minutes before landing, and with it the windows were unlocked, allowing us to admire the southern African continent for all it truly is. Soon though, we began our descent from 40,000 feet, and Cape Town began rising up to meet us. It's always an incredible experience when you know you're about to arrive somewhere new, and I was naturally glued to the window for what would become a spectacular approach into Cape Town International. We would be landing on Cape Town International's runway 19, however our approach would have us loop around the Cape of Good Hope and overfly the city, as well as the famous Robben Island, before having us established on final. And we would touch down firmly at 10:22 AM local time after about 11 hours and 20 minutes in the air. As is traditional on an inaugural flight such as this, Cape Town Airport marked the occasion with a water cannon salute from the fire service before we pulled onto stand Alpha 3, completing the opening chapter of Norse Atlantic Airways' journey into the Southern Hemisphere. Norse Atlantic Airways is a company that should be watched very closely. Aside from raw passion for what they do, they seem to be one of the few airlines that has worked out long-haul low-cost travel in a way that's viable and sustainable. As shown with the case of South Africa, the airline appears to have a knack for identifying markets and attracting crowds from the start. Of course, it's still very early days for the airline, but it's safe to say that they may well go far in the future. With its strategy of gradual expansion and focusing on what they already have, the airline appears to have found a way to carve its niche into the cutthroat world it has entered. Norse Atlantic is a very honest airline, with keeping it simple being a core value that seems to work for them. Maybe that's what the markets need. Only time will tell.